Welcome back to my video series documenting my excursion around Europe. Last time I spoke to you, I was enjoying my last night at Andre's bed and breakfast, just outside Bruges. Unfortunately, I wouldn't have that long to sleep because we had to catch an early train the next day. Thankfully, the relative comfort of train journeys does provide an opportunity to sleep. Heading into Germany, I was struck by the amount of wind turbines that we passed along the way. When I set out and began filming and taking pictures of the places I'd visited, I had never intended to highlight the environmental and sustainable success stories of other countries. It was just the way it worked out. The hostel wasn't that hard to find once we took a train from the centre of Berlin eastwards. In honesty, we were attracted to the Eastern Comfort hostel boat by the novelty of sleeping on the River Seine. When we arrived, we were greeted by the Eastern Comfort staff and given a map of local restaurants and attractions. It was there that I found, close by, on the west side of the river, there was a vegetarian fast food restaurant. Having recently become a vegetarian, I was concerned that there wouldn't be a lot for me to eat around Europe. So this restaurant really took my fancy, and I easily could have returned. After we ate, we took a walk and explored Berlin's more diverse and alternative areas before returning back to the hostel. The lapping of the river inches from my head was like a lullaby, and as such ensured I had a very comfortable night's sleep. The next morning was gloriously bright, and we headed off along the river following the Berlin Wall. We were staying near the largest stretch of the wall still intact. In a fevered excitement to tear down the wall in the late 80s, it was a blessing that so much of it remained intact, as a monument to the past as well as a reminder to the future of how crazy things can become. We passed a number of people restoring sections of the wall using contemporary reference images. This was quite a juxtaposition to the amount of graffiti that we found as we walked closer towards the centre. Very few buildings or objects escaped the mindless tagging and self-promotion that seemed to fill a large amount of people's time. I'm all in favour of graffitied artwork, don't get me wrong, with works such as the Berlin Wall, but these tags are a blight in my opinion. However, the closer we got to the centre, the more the architectural landscape changed from industrial and business buildings into buildings of beauty and extravagance. As we continued to walk eastwards, we passed fountains, cathedrals, churches and libraries of grandeur. We tried to use our guidebook to identify as many buildings as we could, but because of the sheer number, we eventually just followed the main road and admired as we went along. One object that does require a particular point of note is this memorial. Buried underneath this statue is a Jewish victim of the Second World War, as well as a Nazi soldier. I think the message was clear to all, but I'm not too sure how the two would have felt about it had they known. We made our way past the Brandenburg Gate towards the Reichstag. It was at the Brandenburg Gate that I first came into contact with these people dressed up in military uniform posing for pictures for a small donation. This held a grim fascination for me, but I couldn't quite bring myself to partake. The Reichstag building is of particular interest to me, having studied modern history for my A-levels. This building is a focal point of so many major events, not only in Germany's history, but in world history. And to be standing so close to such an important building was quite special. However, the queue was a bit too long and a bit too extreme for me, especially as the temperature was starting to rise. The last place we visited before heading back was the Holocaust Memorial. The pictures that you see of thousands of concrete blocks just don't do the experience justice, and I really do recommend that you visit. Walking in between the blocks conveys a sense of claustrophobia and paranoia, and I can't help but feel that the artist was trying to convey this feeling, and it must have been similar to those suffering Nazi oppression during those early years. As well as this art installation, there was underneath an exhibition documenting the history of the Holocaust, as well as recounting some personal stories from some of its victims. We made our way back to the hostel, however I was still cradling some drinks bottles that I had purchased earlier. I popped into a supermarket along the way just to hand them in to be recycled. However, I was completely surprised when I was given in return money off vouchers to be used in store. It seemed that Germany had found the perfect way of encouraging its citizens to recycle plastic bottles by offering a small cash incentive. I couldn't help but feel this was the way forward, so I exchanged my money off vouchers for more drinks. Along the way we passed more artists restoring stretches of the Berlin Wall. The next morning we decided to cram in more of Berlin's history by visiting primarily Checkpoint Charlie. Checkpoint Charlie had been recommended to me by many people, and I had a brief understanding of what it was. Tensions between the Soviet East and the capitalist West intensified after the end of the Second World War, and in a bid to stop the mass exodus of citizens moving from east to west, the communist-controlled East Germany erected a temporary border, effectively splitting the city in half, and Checkpoint Charlie symbolised the division and played host to a number of key events. After the reunification of Berlin, the checkpoint was destroyed. However, some resourceful people later on decided it could be used as another tourist attraction. I'll just go ahead and be honest, the whole Checkpoint Charlie experience was a bit disappointing. That Disneyland style experience of having actors posing as Soviet and American soldiers made me feel a little uncomfortable, as only the day before I had read stories of people drowning in the River Seine or being shot as they tried to escape from east to west. And here I was in the presence of cheap souvenir shops and naff photo opportunities. It is a testament to the resourcefulness of Berliners to take some of the darkest moments of their nation's history and transform them into garish attractions. One last place of interest was a building called the Blender Block, a complex of buildings dating back to the Second World War, which was the home of the Wehrmacht, the German army. This building was the scene of a conspiracy to assassinate Hitler towards the end of the war. It failed, and this wreath in the courtyard was the place of execution for 3 leading conspirators. The leader of the conspiracy was a man by the name of Stauffenberg, whose plight has become immortalised in the film Valkyrie, starring Tom Cruise, for better or for worse. After seeing the horrors of Hitler's Germany for himself on the front line, Stauffenberg returned to Germany, determined to do something against it, and plotted to kill Hitler using a briefcase bomb. It failed, and he paid with his life. It is a poignant reminder of how the courage, convictions and bravery of many men tried to change the course of history. I left with this information weighing heavily. We returned back to the hostel, not sure what to make of the day's events. For our last meal we went to a restaurant specialising in Singapore cuisine. This had to be the culinary highlight of our trip so far. We were both lavished with exquisite cooking, as well as some free cocktails, to apologise for a brief delay. In reflection, I really enjoyed Berlin, and while there were some points that tarnished the experience, I would of course recommend visiting. My next destination was possibly the one I was looking forward to the most, the capital of the Czech Republic, Prague. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed these videos, please don't forget to subscribe or leave me a comment.